because sometimes Zoom crashes with the camera and the video playing. So if I do crash, if Zoom crashes, tell everybody, give me about 2 minutes and I'll jump right back in again.
Sure. That even I would also just put my camera on, stop my video, and I would be on the listening mode. Yeah, but if I find any questions coming in, I would prompt you chat on the chat, Mike.
Okay, and if you notice any issues, just interject, just unmute yourself and come in. And I won't know. The challenge is I won't know if it crashes because I won't have my camera on, and I'll try to keep the chat up. But
yeah, keep the chat up. But I'll ping you on the chat.
Okay, and of course, ultimately, I'll say, "Hey, Abhijit, are you still there?" And you can unmute yourself and say, "Yeah, I'm still here, Mike."
Yeah, oh sure, I'll do that. Okay, so Rupesh, we have 73 participants. I think at the time.
Yes, let's start.
Yeah, so all over to you, Rupesh.
Yeah, so thank you all for joining APMP India's. I think this is the 4th webinar, and for this year, and I'm glad that we have 234 participants registered for this conference for this webinar. And I think more people are also tuning in, right? And we are also going live on YouTube. So in case some other participants who are not able to join this particular webinar through Zoom, they can do it through the YouTube, right? So anyway, participants, I think most of the people would be knowing that how to use Zoom. So again, I'll just tell you that, if you have some questions, you can put in the question section. And then we also have at the end of this particular webinar, we have put a survey feedback. So please do fill those survey feedback, and that's very important for us. And also give us a suggestion in case you need any other topic which you need that that would be useful for us. Me and Vijit and Sam will work out and bring in some excellent speaker for you. Now, before we start, let me introduce Mr. Vijit. Everyone, I think, would be knowing Vijit. Vijit is our APMP India governing board, and he's also the founder for Glory, and which is an ATO for us for APMP, Authorized Training Organization. So without any wasting any time, Vijit, over to you.
Thank you, Rupesh. Thank you for the introduction, and thank you everyone for coming over and joining before time. That shows the interest which you have in not only in the webinar by APMP India, but about getting an opportunity to be with Mike, hear this maestro here. It is more than a pleasure. It's a privilege for me to introduce Mike to this webinar. And I thought that having Mike is an opportunity where we should not just get limited to the webinar. So we thought of just giving a little tweak to this webinar. And we thought that we would start with a fireside chat with Mike and get whatever we could learn from him in this next 12-15 minutes. And these are questions which are being posed to Mike, which will be posed to Mike based on some learnings which we have through our interactions within the APMP community, with others in the community, of course related to business presentations. And we would try to get Mike answer those questions, share his thoughts about those questions. But before that, I go over to that fireside chat. Just let me read out Mike's biography from his book. Okay, I have been carrying, if you don't have this book has been my companion for last 11 years. We didn't have Amazon at that time in India, Mike, so I had to depend on USPS to get this book from US to India. And from that time, it has remained on my desktop. Thank you so much. It is my companion. And whatever I understand about graphics, it comes from here. So everybody who doesn't have this book, please go through it, look at it, and you will find immense knowledge on making presentations, making visuals. So thank you, Mike, for that. And let me read it out, your biography right from here. And I won't take much time for that. Just to give you a background, Mike started his formal design training at the Baltimore School of Arts. And after 4 years of fine arts education, he attended the Maryland Baltimore Country Digital Arts Program. And then he was hired as a graphic designer at a medical training company, where he was promoted to the art director position. And using his knowledge and understanding of visual communication, Mike has supported trial attorneys and created ad campaigns, tutorials, corporate briefings, web portals, medical training software, and more. And then the 24-hour company, which really transformed the way we look into visuals, the way we look into, other than those stock art images and the clip arts, which we found. I think 24-hour company defined the definition of visuals in the presentation industry, in the proposal industry. And Mike, that credit goes to you. And so, and beyond that, of course, one of the biggest credentials of Mike is that he's one of the 30, I think, Microsoft most valued professionals, maybe something like that. And his PowerPoint tips, tricks, and experts. I have all your books on my Kindle, by the way. So the latest one, the training, or the book on the training, Microsoft trainers. So yeah, keep learning from them. So that's how. So anyway, Mike, let's get into this interesting chat we plan to have. Okay. And for that, I'm going to share with you my screen and show you some numbers. And then we get to that discussion. Okay. So let me share my screen. Okay. Rupesh, can you just enable my screen sharing? Rupesh? Or, okay, if it is not, I may just simply read out.
Yeah, done that. Done.
Oh, you have done that? Okay, thanks so much.
I thought for a second Rupesh was attacked by zombies.
Okay. No, he's already in there. Okay. Can you see my screen here, Mike?
Yes, sir.
Okay. So this is based on a direct interviews and research which we have done with members from APMP as well as outside APMP to gather some data. And this is what the figures say, that 99.4% of the presentation authors, they find it frustrating to search for the right content from the presentation decks they have. And 40% of their time actually goes in searching for these meaningful presentations.
Whoa.
And 30% of the entire proposal development effort is actually spent in changing the headers, footers, fonts, images, things like that. That means 70% of the effort is spent on non-value add tasks for every presentation which you create. So the first thing I would want to know from you, Mike, is that do you agree to these numbers, or do you agree to this experience, or what has been your experience in this area, and how do we really get over this?
Absolutely. That has been my experience. Exactly what you saw is approximately the numbers that I experience professionally here in the States and in Australia and the UK. Essentially, too much time is spent on non-value activities. And some of the things I'm sharing with you today in the session, and I believe you're going to ask me some questions, we may uncover some answers there. But there are processes that you, me, and each person watching this can take to avoid wasting time. And that's what it boils down to, is time. In our industry, the number one challenge that I've heard from everyone is time. I need more time. Well, we can't invent time, but we can work more effectively and efficiently. And today is exactly why I'm here, is to share some best practices to do just that.
Thank you so much, Mike. Thank you so much. That's and we look forward to all the theory. The second question, which basically comes, is everybody expects the proposal manager to create those graphics, or at least to tell what to create those, how to create those graphics. Maybe it may not be the how to create the graphics, but what to create. But creating a graphic or imagining a graphic requires a level of visual thinking. What would you suggest the proposal managers, or how do, so that they can improve their visual thinking skills, because that's very critical.
It is. So the short answer is training, of course. There's people and people like me out there that do training on how to do that. But let's assume you can't do that. we need to figure out something to do without training because I don't have time to do it. I don't have money to do it. So one of the things I recommend is something I'm going to give you at the end of my session called a graphic cheat sheet. I'm going to give you a graphic cheat sheet for anybody that wants it. Abhijit, you've used it, seen it?
Yes, yeah, I saw it from
Okay.
one of your webinars.
Super, super helpful.
Yes,
it's a great way to convert
It is.
text into graphics. The other one is use your favorite search engine, Google, Bing, Yahoo, whatever it is, to search for concepts and click on images and see what pops up. And essentially what you're starting to do is when you see a trend, you're training yourself to understand what visual represents what idea. And then the last thing would be, there is a tool out there called, I'll mention it later, called Build a Graphic. And what it is, it's a visual learning system. So it converts your text in PowerPoint into visuals. And over time, you start to learn what visual represents what concept, what content. So it's practice and being exposed to what other people have done as a way to get the gears turning, as a way to figure out to get unstuck.
Great. And we look forward to all this learning from this session. So I would take much more time. I would just ask one last question. And
Sure.
from there we go. It's all over to you, Mike. My last question is that most of the presentation authors, when they are getting to work on a presentation, they need to start somewhere. Now, how do they maintain, or where do they start from? What is that point of origination of that thought, which would help them in building a coherent storyline for their entire presentation, so that they can build upon that?
Well, my recommendation is to, in a perfect world, always start with the big picture. And what I mean is think macro first and then micro. Now, most of the time when people start creating content for a bid, proposal, tender, grant, they start with the tactical or technical information. And the challenge with that is then we're backwards and we're going the wrong way. So if I start with what my goal is, what is my goal? Okay, to win this procurement. All right. What do I have? Who's my audience? Are they tactical thinkers? Are they strategic thinkers? And then what is my message that summarizes my entire document, proposal, presentation, briefing, whatever it is? What is my message that will motivate them to care and tell them how I'm going to do it? And we will talk exactly about how to do that. But essentially, I need to figure out, I need to summarize my entire document, my proposal, my bid, my presentation in one sentence so that I understand it as the author, so that then that becomes the adjudicator for any challenges that I have. So if I have any questions about whether this content should go in or not go in, I go back to that main goal, that main message, and then decide whether it fits under that umbrella. But that without that, I'm creating something for which I don't know what I'm trying to say. So I need to know what I'm trying to say before I say it. Does that make sense, Abhijit?
Great. That absolutely it makes sense. And that's exactly where we get stuck, because we don't know that process. We get involved in the tactical part instead of looking into the big picture and the final outcome, and obviously the audience. So those are the three critical points which we need to take in. So I think with that, we end up this was such a meaningful, although it was very short, we would like to have hours and hours of discussion on this, Mike, but yeah, next time, we'll leave it for next time. So with that, the stage is all yours. The webinar starts from here. And I will be switching off my video, but I'm always there on the chat. Thank you. All the best.
Thank you. Thank you, Abhijit. Thank you so much. Thank you, Rupesh. What I'm going to do is I'm going to shut off my video because I found that sometimes Zoom does weird things. If for any reason Zoom crashes on me or for you, Abhijit and Rupesh will be there for you. It'll take me about 2 or 3 minutes to jump back in there. So please be patient. I promise this session is worth your time. And in the unlikely event I'm kicked off, sit tight. I'll be right back. So I'm going to switch off my video right now. I'm going to start sharing, and I'm going to try to keep chat up while I do this. And so that way, if for any reason something goes wonky. All righty. Abhijit, can you see my screen okay?
Yes, I can.
Brilliant. So today we're going to be learning how to create graphics without having a graphic designer or having the skills already. So we're gonna learn some of those skills right now. If you don't follow me on social media, please do, because I always share helpful tips. At the end of this session, I will be sharing with you a link to download amazing content, 1,800 icons, free graphics, step-by-step instructions on how to make this stuff, and my graphic cheat sheet. So you have access to a ton of stuff at the end. We're going to be learning how to make even the most complex content using tools that you have available right now. So you have an option when it comes to making content for your bids, your proposals, your tenders. You can either buy it or acquire it, or you can build it. Those are your two choices. I find that I need to do both. Sometimes I go buy it and sometimes I build it. It depends upon if it exists. When it comes to buying it, we want to remember there are some key things that we need to understand. In the world of visuals, graphics, there are two families of visuals. They are either vector file types or raster file types. If you look at the bottom of my screen, you'll notice that there are, these are the names of vector file types, and these are the names of raster file types. I do not believe this slide is in your downloads. So if you want to do a screen scrape or grab this image, please do. Raster images are essentially photographs. It's a photo at its core, whereas a vector image is made up of math. So it's infinitely editable. So it's just made up of math. If I were to zoom into a vector image, so let's zoom into a vector image here. I'm going to zoom into this. If you notice, the image stays clean and crisp and very professional. If I were to zoom into the raster image, I am losing resolution. It is resolution dependent, meaning I need the file to be of a sufficient resolution so that if I zoom in or print it, it will look professional. Also, vector images are infinitely editable. So if this doesn't match my brand standards, I can quickly and easily modify it because it's made up of math or polygons or pieces. So vector images are far more superior to raster in most situations when it comes to creating bid graphics, proposal graphics, briefings, presentations, because it gives me flexibility. Also, an added bonus is that vector graphics are resolution independent and have tiny file sizes, whereas raster images are typically large. So I'd want to stick with vector file types as much as possible when I'm buying content or acquiring content, unless I need a photograph. Also, if you want to do some fancy effects, if I have vector images, I can easily do with a feature called Morph, which is kind of like auto animate in PowerPoint. I can do some pretty cool stuff very, very easily. If we have time, I will share with you how to do that. So essentially, vector graphics are editable graphics, raster graphics are photographs. Stick with vector if you can. Also, when you're looking for your graphics, keep in mind that the style matters. So back in the day, when we were younger, if you could create something that was photorealistic or three-dimensional, which is called skeuomorphism, you were considered amazing. Wow, how did you do that, Abhijit? You're amazing. How did you do it? And it's because we were using skills that most people don't have. Then came the advent of the smartphone. So the smartphone came out and the user interface was much smaller. That means that if I used a bunch of aesthetic embellishment, such as drop shadows, textures, gradients, if I use that and shrunk it down to 8 pixels by 8 pixels, it would look like a mess. It would look terrible. So that gave birth to the flat style. Simple designs that look good, small or large. And then in 2000, about 15 or 16, Google said, you know, I love flat style, but sometimes I need skeuomorphism. So they invented something called the material style. The material style takes the best of skeuomorphic and combines it with the best of flat so that you can create just about anything. And it doesn't have to be 3D. What material style says is, if you need a drop shadow, go ahead and use it. If you need a gradient, go ahead and use it. So material style will be here for a long time. Why am I telling you this? Because the style of your content directly supports your messaging. So let's say we have an audience that's over 40 years old. They grew up with the traditional style. And so when they see stuff that is photorealistic or 3D, they go, wow, that's awesome. But if we have people who are under 40 years old that grew up with the flat style and they see stuff that looks simple and clean, they go, wow, that's awesome. Excuse me. So what do you do if you have a mixed group? Because typically if someone over 40 sees the flat style, they say, I could make that. Can you make it pop? Whereas if I show someone under 40, and this is a blanket statement, this isn't always true, it's usually true. If I show someone the flat style, and I show someone the flat style, a skeuomorphic image, they say, wow, that's way too much. But if I have a large audience, if I have an audience that's young to older, then the material style is the way to go because it's the most appealing style. So if we look at these 4 graphics, they are done in the material style. Skeuomorphism when you need it, flat when you don't. Here is an example of a skeuomorphic design. It has a lot of aesthetic embellishment, drop shadows and bevels and gradients and things of that nature. This is the flat design, extremely simple and clean. And then last but not least is the material style, which typically appeals to the broadest audience. So when possible, you want to go with the material style when you're acquiring or buying your graphics. 2 of my favorite places to go are Pexels and Pixabay. They are free. I love them. I love them. They are great for finding photographs. So let me show you an example. So here we have Pexels. You are able to type in concepts such as risk. And Abhijit, can you still hear me? Are we still good?
Yes, you are pretty much good.
Brilliant. So if for any reason I start to get wiggy, let me know. So we can see all these images that we could use in our tenders and our bids or proposals. We could also use Pixabay. So this, we're going to find videos and images and things like that we could use, raster images that we could use in our bids and proposals. And then last but not least, my top 3 favorite. So Pexels and Pixabay are wonderful. I'll do this. I'll type this in. I'll put this in the chat window so you have it. Let's go back here. Let's go to my chat window, which is right. Where's chat? Chat. Brilliant. There's chat. Type this in. Oops. Sorry, folks. That was my Zoom link. I apologize. I copy and pasted something to my clipboard. That's Pexels. And here is Pixabay. Grab this, paste it in there. And then the last one that I'm going to share with you is called Build-A-Graphic. And I mentioned that earlier. So those are my top 3. And I will show you what Build-A-Graphic does right now. Build a graphic. So build a graphic is $99 a year, which is about 7,000 rupees. And the way it works is this. So Pexels and Pixabay are free. Build a graphic is for fee, but it is a very low price. So here's how it works. So you have a choice between building your graphic or using pre-built graphics. So you would type your text into PowerPoint or copy and paste it into PowerPoint, and then you would chunk it. So you would chunk it by sentence, bullet, or paragraph. So it breaks it up into bite-sized digestible pieces. The next thing that I would do is I would look for visuals that communicate that information. So under Build a Graphic tab, it analyzes all the keywords and phrases and gives you visuals to represent those keywords and phrases. So I would be looking for the visual that represents the concept that I'm communicating. So right now, 3-tier escalation, standard operating procedure. So I'm going to go to 3, and I'm going to choose this graphic here. The next thing I want to do is I'm going to look at the next chunk of text. We have a 3-tiered help desk solution for computer issues and problems. Our standard operating procedure escalates based on the complexity of the issue. It is my opinion that this visual communicates this text. So I'm going to delete it. I think it's redundant. The next thing I'm going to do is I'm going to reposition my text. I'm going to reposition my text to make sure that it is aligned with the visual. So I'm going to shrink my text down to, let's say, 18 point. Let's shrink this down. And I'm going to co-locate my text with the graphic element. And one of the questions from Jay was, when it searches the images database, are those images copyright free? Yes, these images are copyright free. You can use them for whatever you want. The only thing you can't legally do is resell them as stock images. So once you use them, you can, once you place them in your content, you can share them with the world. You just can't resell them as stock images. So under tier 1, it says tier 1 issues are resolved automatically via an AI system. So I am going to go to, the Build a Graphic tab and choose automatically. And I am going to pop this graphic in. Now the graphics are in the material style and they are vector based, which means that I can change anything about them with the click of a button. If I want to make it look like a blueprint, I can simply give it a blue outline and give it a white fill. Whoops, give it a white fill. And then it looks like a blueprint, something that's coming. And yes, unfortunately, this is only in English right now. One of the questions that Florian asked me, is it limited to English? Right now, I am sorry to say, yes, it is. So the next thing I'm going to do is tier 2 issues are resolved by a remote IT service technician. So I'm going to go to Build a Graphic, and I am going to look for the concept of technician. What would show technician? And I would scroll down until I found somebody that I thought represented the IT technician. Scale it down, place it wherever you want, and then move on to tier 3. Tier 3 issues are resolved by an IT service mechanic. I'm going to insert. I'm going to scroll down to find one of those words, mechanic. Let's see what I can find. No. Yes. Drop in my mechanic, and I'm going to scale it down. And now I have a graphic that represents it. So it's also a visual learning system. So I'm learning as I go. If this was created for a written document, I would simply group everything and scale it to the size it's going to be in my written document. That way I know the font size. So once I do that, what I can do is I can launch my written document, maybe Microsoft Word or something like that, and I can copy the file because it is the same size it's going to be in my document, 6.35 inches, 6.5 inches, whatever it is, centimeters, you decide. So what I would do is then copy it and save it as an image. I can right click and choose Save as Picture. or I could copy and paste it into Word, and that way people can find what they're looking for. They can put the graphic in there. So those are the two options. There are tons of visuals that are ready to go. They can be what's called isometric graphics, which have that 3D look and feel. You've got different scenarios such as network operating centers, distribution, processes. You have maybe a conveyor belt metaphor. You have other types of graphics to show interoperability, puzzle graphics, pyramid graphics, timelines, gear graphics. You get the idea. Maps for everything around the world. So there are great graphics for you to get started. It is not free, Swapnil. It is 99 US dollars per year, which is about 7,000 rupees per year. So the other two are free. And Vishal says anything for building systems such as access control fire system. Vishal, you would have to do that yourself. So there's nothing that technical in here. You would have to use the pieces to create your own visual depiction of that. Great question, though. So I'm going to close this out. More graphics are added all the time, blah, blah, blah. Great resource. I use it all the time. So I'm going to suspend this. We are going to move forward. So those are the three places that I prefer to get or acquire or buy my stuff. Pexels, Pixabay, and Build-A-Graphic. Those are my favorite places to go. So that's buying it or acquiring it. But what happens if you can't do that? What happens if, like Vishal says, hey, I need, yes, Pratul, it is, sorry, the question was 7K rupees per annum. Yes, per annum per person. Yes, cannot be used by multiple users, but can be used on multiple computers. Pratul, great question. Let's like one person says, I am not a visual thinking person. Can I pick up the skills using $1 billion graphic subscription? Yes, it is a visual learning system. The more you use the tool, the more you understand how to visually represent content. So you say, hey, every time I type in process, I'm seeing these images. So apparently these are this is the universal visual depiction of this concept. Yes, these are amazing questions. So now it's time to build it. I can't let's say Vishal said, there's nothing I can find for access control fire system. So I have to make it myself. So the first thing that I need to do is discover. What I mean by that is I need to know my audience. So looking at this visual, who is the target audience for this visual? Go ahead and type it into chat. So looking at this visual, who is the target audience? Who would care about this? Kids. Florian says kids. Yeah, maybe. Yeah. Foodies. Yeah. Someone who is heavy. Yes. Mothers. Mindful eaters. Vegetarians, Sweta says. Yes. Absolutely. So once we figure out who our audience is, the wall says health conscious people. Yes, absolutely. Once we figure out who our audience is, then what we're going to do is figure out what our message is. So if, let's say, our audience are people going to the gym and want to be fit, what can I say to them to get them to do what I want them to do? All before this, we have to have a goal. And my guess is in our bids and proposals, our goal is to win. But ultimately, once we figure out our audience, we figure out the message that's going to resonate with them. For example, are we talking to vegetarians? Are we talking to chefs? Are we talking to people who want to be fit? Once we figure out that audience, we figure out that message. So looking at this infographic, what is the message? I'll give you a hint. It should be blindingly obvious. What is the message of this infographic? Go ahead and type it into chat. What's the message of this infographic? It should be the most the first thing you see on this page. What is the message? If my audience are people who want to be fit, very close, very close. Yes, very close. I'm seeing all your comments. Very close. Do's and don'ts close. It's even easier than that. The answer is it's the title. It's the title of the graphic. Think of this. Your message should be what's called an action caption in your visuals. It should be the title of your slide. It should be the takeaway, the headline, the bumper sticker. It is the point of your content. It's the point of your graphic. So your message should always be your title or action caption. So in this, excuse me, what we're saying is eat this, not that for breakfast so that you can be healthier. We need to get to the point in our graphics and our visuals. We live in an at a glance world. Our audience no longer requests that our information be simple, clear, and succinct. They require it. If our decision makers, evaluators, if our audience can't quickly understand our point, they will be confused. And the confused mind says no. So taking a look at this, if we look at this, we have our point that we're trying to make. Intelligence at a glance. If we look at this graphic, the whole point is what's the total true cost? It should be very obvious what these messages are. Our message should always be broken up into two parts: a motivator, which gives the audience a reason to care, and a means by which they get it. Now, the motivator can be implied, but when we imply it, like the last graphic, the motivator was implied. Eat this, not that for breakfast so that you will be healthier. The motivator was implied. I don't recommend implying your motivators. I recommend being explicit and not implicit. So you can have up to 3 motivators. Why? Because we have different audiences. We might have a strategic thinker, a tactical thinker, and we want to appeal to both of them. So our motivators may be up to 3 to accommodate my audience. So you can have 3 motivators and a means. A motivator, by the way, is pain, gain, or fear. I don't like fear and I don't like pain. So I focus on gain. Benefits. So I focus on up to 3 motivators being benefits. If you have quantitative evidence, please share it. Things with numbers have teeth. Now, most of the time, our content will be qualitative and not quantitative. For that reason, most of the time, we will not have numbers. But if you do have numbers, we intuitively know things that are measured improve. So therefore, add those numbers. So once I figure out who my audience is and I have my message, and my message is one sentence, a 1-sentence summary of my content that has 2 parts, M&M, a motivator and a means. And you can have up to 3 motivators, and the motivators can be implied if it's very clear. For example, I don't necessarily need to put a motivator in my action caption if I'm talking about risk reduction or risk mitigation, because obviously the benefit to risk mitigation is reducing risk and errors and things of that nature. So it's it's implied. It's explicitly implied. Next, I need to communicate, explain, or proof. I need to share my proof and explanation to validate the truth of that message. So let's use this message as our starting point. So we have a message which is stop 65% of fraud before it happens using Eagle Solutions 3 Cleverkeys. My audience are Eagle Solutions employees who need to explain this to their customers. So imagine I walked up to someone and said, hey, stop 65% of fraud before it happens using Eagle Solutions 3 Cleverkeys. What would they ask? Well, they would ask two questions. They would ask, what are the 3 Cleverkeys? I don't know what they are. And they would ask, how does it stop 65% of fraud? That means that our graphic needs to answer as simply as possible those what and how questions. So what are the 3 Cleverkeys? Well, there are 3 new automatic features that start as soon as the user logs in and not after they submit. How do the 3 Cleverkeys stop 65% of fraud? Well, the first one starts protecting immediately. That stops 18%. The next one confirms identity credentials. That stops 28%. And the next one denies inconsistent reports, which stops 19%. So that's a very high level answer to the question. The next thing we need to do after we do discovery is now we need to turn that content into a graphic. Here's how you do it. First thing I'm going to do is chunk my text. If you remember using Build a Graphic, the first thing we did is we chunked our text. We broke it up into bite-sized digestible nuggets. Vishal says my audio is phasing in and out. Vishal, it might be on your end because no one else has said anything. So hopefully yours is gonna maybe too much of filters. It might be just on your end, my friend. Do check it out. If anybody else is having audio issues, let me know because I will do my best to fix it. So the first thing I need to do is chunk. So Florian says I'm loud and clear on his end. So Vishal or her end, it might be there. It might be on your end, Vishal. So I'm going to chunk the information, which is I'm going to highlight the most important content. This is what I deem as most important to achieve my goal. I'm going to erase everything else that is not needed. That's it. I now have chunked my information. I'm left with this content that you see on your screen right now. Now I need to move from chunking to assembly. So I'm going to take that chunked information and reassemble it to tell a story, to tell a narrative. So what I did was I took my content and I said, all right, the 3 Cleverkeys go into Eagle Solutions' existing IT security protocols, which then stops 65% of fraud before it happens. Notice how quickly or how closely I am to a graphic. Following this process takes even the most difficult to understand content, the most complex information, and makes it easy to follow and understand. So once I have chunked and assembled it, then I'm going to visualize it. What do I mean by visualize it? Well, there's lots of techniques. I'm going to share with you a few. So the first one is we could literally show what we're talking about. What is the literal method? It is literally showing a description. So when we would describe something, if I say, well, Bijou is about this tall and they have this color hair. No, just show me a picture. So if I were to say to you, our search engine interface is clean and simple to use, how could I prove that to you? How could I prove that to you? Bhaskar, how could I prove that? Rakesh, how could I prove that to you? What could I do to prove to you that our search engine interface is clean and simple to use? Type it into chat. What would you do? What would you need in order to prove that the search engine is clean and simple to use? How could I prove it to you? Florian, how could I prove it to you? Yeah, absolutely. Sweta, yes. Vishal, yeah, show a demo, show screenshots. You better believe it. Show what we're talking about. Demo it. Yes. Ganapathy, yes. Absolutely. And forgive me if I'm messing up the pronunciation of your names. I am learning how to get better, and just point and laugh at me. It's totally okay. For example, what is the anatomy of an eye? Oh, the sclera. Well, the sclera is the point. Now, show me a picture. The reinforced carbon panels are on the shuttle where the wing, where the wing. No, show me a picture. If you're describing something, show me a picture. The next methodology is quantitative. What is it? Quantitative graphics. When you are talking about amounts, value, and time, use a quantitative graphic. There are lots of quantitative graphics. There are area charts and bar charts and bubble charts. There are candlestick charts and calendars. Now, candlestick are more for stocks. If that's not your world, who cares? A dashboard graphic, which is a holistic view of your content. Think of a car's dashboard. Are you going too fast? Do you have enough gas, petrol? Do you have enough battery power? This is something we would learn at a glance. So it's a holistic view of your content. A Gantt chart is basically a timeline on steroids where we have more detail. Line chart, pie chart, point chart, table or matrix, they're the same thing, and a timeline. Those are some of the most popular quantitative charts on the planet. Now, if your audience prefers something else, give them something else. Do know that quantitative charts spin data differently. So if I wanted to talk about parts of a whole, I would go with the pie chart. If I wanted to empirically compare the amounts, then I would go with a bar chart. Neither is wrong, just one spins the information slightly differently. Do avoid just showing data. So in our world, we need to not just show data, because that's what this is. We need to do data analysis. So just showing data, which is what this is not good. Instead, I need to also do the analysis. Basically, get to the point. What's my message? So one of the first things I would do is I would clean up the chart and remove unnecessary content. The next thing I would do is I would say, look, we did a lot of research. I need you to focus on this line here. This line here is the number one important thing. But just know we did a lot of research. So I'm simplifying it to get to the point. Even better would be if I just came out and said, look, we're noticing a 28% average decrease. Get to the point. We need to get to the point, and that is our message. Our message will be the adjudicator. Our message will decide what goes in and stays out of our quantitative charts. The next thing is, or the last methodology that I could use, is called the substitution method. It is a visual metaphor, simile, or analogy, and I would use it when I have something that is complex or too abstract for my audience. So what words come to mind when you think of a bridge? Go ahead and type it in the chat. So when you picture or think of a bridge, what word pops into your head, or words? When you think of a bridge, what word or words? So Aravinda says something that connects, connection. Yes. Connectivity, connecting 2 points. Yes. Mend. Yes, absolutely. Reach out, poles, stability, gap. Yes. Metal architecture, Florian says. Yes. So what happens is when we use a bridge metaphor, we automatically communicate interaction, balance, stability. All of those things are woven in without us having to waste space with words. So I could say, hey, the old system had frequent outages, wasn't supported, had costly training, and was slow, where the new system is going to be much better. So in migrating to the new system, it's risky. It's dangerous. There's sharks with laser beams on their heads in that water. We have to watch out. But if we follow a process, we can bridge the gap and lower, we can bridge the gap and lower transition risk. So we could, let's change this. So we can bridge the gap and lower transition risk. So I am using this visual to summarize all those concepts, or perhaps hiring people. Hold on, Michaud says, bridging the gap between, yes, great point. I think Bijou, you made it. Yes, it's bridging the gap between the as is and the to be state. Or perhaps hiring people is like water flowing through pipes. They just come in, they follow the process, and then boom, we get a hire. So we're using a visual metaphor to communicate the content in a way that's easy to understand. Or perhaps we want to show security, and we are going to reinforce that by showing a dome or something that intuitively shows that our content is protected in some way. So you're looking for visual metaphors, similes, or analogies that help reinforce your content. So this is the old way of doing things. It's old and rusty and icky. You're going to get tetanus from it, or the new, shiny, clean way. So with that in mind, what image shall we use to represent IT security? So Eagle Solutions has existing IT security. Go ahead and type it in the chat. When you get a secure connection on the internet, what symbol do you see for that secure connection? So, what symbol do you see? So a shield would work, a firewall for security. Yep. What else? A lock, a green check mark. Yes, absolutely. A key, close. Aravinda, you're almost there. For security, you would probably go with a lock, a fence, a firewall, something like that. So something that is synonymous with the concept of security. Gate would totally work. So you would pick. So if we're using a lock to represent security, what symbol might we use to represent the 3 Cleverkeys? What symbol might we use to represent the 3 Cleverkeys? Go ahead and type it in the chat. Yes, I agree completely. Yes, a combination would work too. Yes, Florian, yes. Piyush, absolutely. So we're going to use keys to represent the 3 Cleverkeys. So now let me put it all together. In another example, you could use a puzzle, Vishal. You could instead of this. So let's say, actually, Vishal, you're ahead of us. We'll come back to that. So let me show you what we've done so far. So I'm going to show you how to stop 65% of fraud and theft before it happens. We're going to do that with something called the 3 Cleverkeys. Aravinda, you are amazing. Yes, Aravinda says Lego blocks. So the 3 Cleverkeys. Well, the first one starts protection protocols immediately. That stops 18%. The next one confirms identity and credentials. That stops 28%. And the last one denies inconsistent reports, which stops 19%. Now, let me go into each one of the keys to show you how they work. There is a problem with this metaphor. What do keys do to locks? Remember, we're showing that we're locking security. What do keys do to locks? What is the problem with this metaphor? Go ahead and type it in the chat. What is the problem with this metaphor? Yes, the keys open the lock. And yes, maybe we don't want to have an old school lock. Maybe we want to use a modern lock. Yes. Those are all things that we would consider. So one of the things I'm giving you is called a graphic cheat sheet. The way it works is every single visual that you and I will ever make fits into one of the categories down the left side, meaning that our content is either showing hierarchy, architecture or structure, process or flow, cause and effect, comparison, something like that. Once we choose what we're trying to communicate, let's say it's synergy, we would pick that row. If you're choosing simple content or a simple visual, you would use the yellow column. If it's more complex, the orange column. And if it's quantitative, amount, value, or time, we would choose the blue column. So looking at this graphic, looking at these different graphic types, you could use a building block, a chain graphic, a puzzle graphic. What other graphic type could you use instead of the lock and the keys to show that the three clever keys are working together to create security? Just start typing it in. Looking at these graphic types, what other graphic type could we use to replace the last graphic that you saw? A pipe graphic. Yes, absolutely. That would totally work. What else? Spiral graphic. Yes, that would absolutely work. A funnel. Pawan. Yes, absolutely. A nil. Yes. A funnel. Yes. Building blocks. Yes. Here's the secret. They all work. All of them work because they're all showing synergy. But you would pick the right graphic type based on your needs. So I'm going to go with a peg graphic, and we're going back to what someone said earlier. It's basically a Lego graphic. So let me show you what I mean. Yeah, the DNA, we would have to have a triple strand DNA, which would be kind of weird. So you'd be forcing it to work. You wouldn't want to use the DNA unless you had a triple strand DNA, which would look kind of weird and look like you're mutating. You probably wouldn't do that. But yes, it would work to show synergy. So I'm going to show you how to stop 65% of fraud and theft before it happens with 3 clever keys. The first one starts protection protocols immediately. That stops 18%. The next one confirms identity and credentials. That stops 28%. And the last one denies inconsistent reports, which stops 19%. We put that together and that creates the new level of security, which stops 65% of fraud and theft before it happens. Now, of course, if this were a written document, you would absolutely just show the pieces pulled apart. So I would simply just show something like this. I would show the bits and pieces coming together. And if you don't like it rotated sideways, you could simply rotate the graphic so that the text is facing the way you want it to read. So the choice is completely up to you. So that is the process that I use to start my graphic. I use discovery and design. I look at who my audience is, what my message is, my motivator, my means. I explain or prove by providing demonstrative evidence. I give you the 3 processes, the literal method, the quantitative method, the substitution method. Then we chunk the information, reassemble it to tell a story, and visualize it, which are the 3 methods, to literally show it, or to use the quantitative method or the substitution method, or you can use your graphic cheat sheet. But now I need to render the graphic. I need to render the graphic. Good, I'm glad. Anant, I appreciate it. So one of the things you can do for quantitative graphics is in PowerPoint, one of your options. Now I'm going to show you in PowerPoint that you can insert. And the reason why I'm using PowerPoint is because we all pretty much have PowerPoint. It's a ubiquitous tool. So I'm not using Adobe Illustrator because not everybody has it, and the learning curve is high and the price might be prohibitive. But I can insert a chart and insert a quantitative chart. So that is the best, fastest way to create quantitative graphics. A question that I just had from Jay was, can you chunk without build a graphic? Yes, I would chunk things by simply typing it up in PowerPoint or Word and highlighting the pieces that are most important. There is no magic button that you press to break apart the text. However, you can simply highlight it and pull it into separate text boxes or write it down on sticky notes and reassemble it that way. Take a screen grab of this. This appears in one of my books. I can't give it to you because it's protected by copyright by the organization that prints or created the book, that hired me to create the book. But these are what different quantitative graphic types are in PowerPoint and what they are best for. So take a quick picture of this, and then we'll move forward. You can use what's called smart art. Now, I don't recommend it, but if you do use smart art, here's why I don't recommend smart art. Because if we say our content is unique and innovative, but when we look at the graphics, they look like what I've seen over and over and over again, then I'm going to question how innovative this is. I'm going to question how innovative it is. You say your stuff is innovative. Well, it better look like it, sound like it, feel like it, and taste like it. Super important. Absolutely important. But if you must use smart art, when I say smart art, I mean insert, and then one of your options is smart art. If you must use it, please format it, which means change the colors, change the style so that it's something that's unique to your document. My recommendation is never use smart art if you can help it, because it looks like everyone else's. People do judge a book by its cover. We live in an at-a-glance society. If we want people to think that we spent a lot of time on our content, then we better start showing them that we did. So it doesn't look like we just threw it together, that we took extra time to put together our bid or our proposal. But what happens when you need to create something that doesn't exist at all? Well, here's how you do it. Part of your downloads is I'm giving you step-by-step instructions on how to make even the most complex content. So I'm going to show you right now how to make a gear. Now, this is in your downloads, so don't worry about remembering exactly what I'm saying. So the first thing I'm going to do is I'm going to insert a circle. The next thing I'm going to do is I'm going to go to my insert button, and I'm going to choose 24 pointed star. And I'm going to draw that star. I'm going to change the color so you can see it. And I'm going to place it over top of my circle. I'm going to use the reshape node, and I'm going to grab this little reshape node, and I am going to pull it in a little bit. Then I'm going to select both of these objects. I have both selected, and I'm going to choose under my shape format tab, I am going to choose merge shapes intersect. The next thing I'm going to do is I'm going to insert another circle. I'm going to place that circle over top. I'm going to select both of these objects, and I'm going to choose merge shapes union. The next thing I'm going to do is I'm going to cut a hole through the center of my object. So I am going to place it in the center. I'm going to click on the gear first, shift click the circle, because in order to subtract one object from another, which is what we're about ready to do, I need to click on the cookie dough first, then click the cookie cutter. Think about it. You cannot make a cookie or a biscuit without having the biscuit dough first. Then you have, doesn't matter how many biscuit cutters you have, you can't make biscuits without the cookie dough or biscuit dough. Click on the cookie dough first, shift click the cookie cutter, merge shapes, subtract. The next thing I'm going to do is animate it. So I'm going to take my gear, and I'm going to choose under animations, I'm going to choose spin. Once I choose spin, I am going to change the parameters. So I'm going to choose timing on click 5 seconds. And I'm going to choose effect options. I want to 360 degrees clockwise. Yes. And I'm going to choose that it repeats until end of slide. I'm going to duplicate that gear, and I'm going to rotate it slightly so that the teeth are interlocked like this. I'm going to click on the second gear in my animation pane. I'm going to choose start with previous, and I'm going to choose effect options, rotate counterclockwise. Rotate counterclockwise, the opposite direction. And then when I go to my presentation, I have 2 interlocking gears. So you can make this stuff from scratch if you know how. So part of your downloads is I am giving you step-by-step instructions on how to make this content. So the stuff that you're seeing, you'll be able to make some of it with the download instructions. Anand, I'm glad it looks simple. Once you know how to do it, you can make amazing things. And if you make it, it's vector. Vector means that I can easily change colors and styles and change it back again because it is vector-based. So PowerPoint is creating all their shapes are vector-based shapes. So you can make some pretty amazing things if you start to learn the step-by-step instructions on how to make them. They seem impossible, but they're not. Once you know how to make them, they're relatively simple. And then you use them to create a graphic asset library that then you can use over and over and over again in your content so that you can speed creating visuals for your bids and proposals and grants and quotes and anything else that you're putting forward. By the way, I'm a geek. I'm a nerd. I wrote a bunch of books. I wrote 2 books, not a bunch of books, 2 books. Here's one. Here's another one. That's fine. That's all fine and dandy. I wanted to make sure that we had enough time for Q&A, but first, here is the secret link to download the content. So I'm going to place this in chat. This will help you be able to download. I recommend downloading it after we're finished because if you're trying to download and watch a Zoom, it may slow us down. So this is the secret link to download our content. I want to make sure that we have time for questions. So Abhijit, I'm going to now, I'm going to turn my slides off. I am going to share this and then we can take any questions that anybody may have. Close this out and start my camera. Here we go. Where's my camera? All righty. Hopefully that was helpful. Hopefully people got a little bit of a few golden or platinum nuggets that they can use. And if you have any questions, I'm happy to answer.
It was amazing, Mike. This would remain. There's a lot of learning and a lot of takeaways, and this would remain for every participant a memorable evening, a memorable hour worth spent. So let's open for questions. Okay, so Sridhar Iyer says, I want to buy those 2 books. Are they available in India? Okay, yeah, I know the digital versions are available on Kindle. Yep, you can get it. Do you have a publication, any Indian publication which is supporting this, or you can order them from on Amazon India? I believe you can order them on Amazon India and they're available.
I think so. There's no translated versions unless the publishers translated it, but I don't think they did.
No, yeah, even are they being shipped from US or they are being shipped here in India from Indian publication itself? But I think on Amazon, it hardly takes any time. Within 15 days, you get the book in hand. Well, for me, I had to trace down USPS because I ordered it in 2008. And yeah, we didn't have Amazon at that time.
It looks like we have a question about what's the best way to keep ourselves updated about new trends. Google, Bing. I do it all the time. I go, what latest design trends? And I just look it up and take a look at it and see if it matches my experience as a designer, but you don't need that. You can just look at the latest trends. Usually they're right. Usually, not always. Usually they're correct. That's the best way to do it. I think we had another question, didn't we? Yes. Oh, I saw somebody say, what was it? Arvinda said, that was brilliant step-by-step presentation. Now what do I do with my designer? That depends upon their proficiency, all those fun things. That's the way it goes.
Yeah.
So Abhijit, did you have a question?
No. I didn't have a question. Yeah, please go ahead, please.
One of the questions that you were talking about when we chatted earlier about this presentation, you said, should every presentation or proposal be unique with unique content, or can we reuse from past presentations or bids or proposals? Right. And the answer that I have found is that reuse is okay as long as it's not a crutch and it is broken up into smaller chunks that are bespoke to that particular effort. So for example, human beings take the path of least resistance. So if I have a section of text of content for my bid or proposal, and it's already been done and submitted for another bid or proposal, I'm probably just going to copy the whole thing and paste it and do a quick pass and hope that I can modify it to accommodate this specific effort, this specific bid. The problem with that is that we're going to make mistakes. Whereas I find that if I create content that has or a library of content that has holes in it, that says place something specific for this bid here, and it's smaller chunks. So for example, think of a visual, recipe. So if I'm creating, let's say I'm creating tandoori chicken, then what I would do is, rather than having frozen tandoori chicken, which I just thaw out, which is not good because it's not always going to be the same, it's not always going to fit. Instead, I have my coriander, my cumin, my turmeric, my cayenne. I have all those things that then I put together. So think of reuse as recipes, ingredients that you would have in smaller bite-sized chunks. That has been my experience, Abhijit.
Thank you so much. Thank you so much, Mike. I think we have another question from Jay Therimala. In your opinion, how many hours do you feel is good enough to create a presentation with 10 to 12 slides?
I usually recommend about, now from including all the work, up to 4 hours a slide, That includes concepting, figuring out what you're trying to say. That includes revisions. That includes everything. I've created slide decks in minutes, 10 to 12 slides, as long as they're simple. But a rule of thumb that I say is about 4 hours a slide is fair. I too am reading over the chat.
Okay.
I see one from Ashish. Did you get that one?
Yeah.
Ashish?
No, I didn't get that one.
It says graphics and designs are subjective, excuse me, sorry, and based on perceptions. But is there a basic checklist to follow while creating professional presentation or graphics? Yes, there is. And I can send you that checklist if you email me at the email address on your screen. Email me and say you want that checklist. Yes. Basically, the goal is that they communicate the right information and they look professional. A rule of thumb that designers use is they use an invisible grid behind their graphics, and that assures that things align and they're appropriately spaced. And those are subtle things that we can do to make sure that at a glance, our graphics look and feel professional. So I can send you that checklist. There's another one. Am I stepping on your toes, Abhijit, by reading the chat?
No way. You're most welcome. You're helping me out there. I'm listening. Right. You're helping me to listen rather than looking at the chat.
Fair enough. Jay said, how many slides are optimum for a presentation without burdening the audience? Jay, my opinion is less is best. So figure out what your goal is, minimum amount of content that you need to communicate in order to achieve that goal. So sometimes it's going to be 50 slides. Sometimes it's going to be one slide. It really depends upon the proficiency of the audience in the topic being discussed. So if the audience is very proficient, then I only need a few slides. If the audience isn't, I may need to educate them, so it would require more slides. I wish there was a rule of thumb answer. I don't have it. I do know that less is best. People do not want to sit through an unnecessary amount of content. Einstein said, if you can't explain it simply, you don't understand it well enough. So we know this intuitively, that if the facilitator, the presenter, the person proposing, the salesperson, if they can't explain their content simply and clearly, then they might not know it well enough. So less is best. It's a good one. Aravinda says, very often we are told that images that we create need to be country specific. Yes, For example, I am told the graphics I need for the US proposals need to be blue and a bit dark red. That part's not true. This makes it all blue document. What's your take? So when it comes to color, there are three choices to make. If your goal is to sell something, you're going to want to use your customers' colors or your prospects' colors. Why? Because they trust that which is familiar. Familiarity breeds trust. Trust is the closest thing to a silver bullet in proposals. No trust, no sale. Same thing with presentation, same thing with learning and development. So number one, if your goal is to sell something, you use your audience's colors, your customers' colors, or your prospects' colors. Number two, if your goal is to build mind share about you and your organization or your product, you would use your brand standards, because we keep being exposed. I go to your website, I get your business card, I download a brochure, I keep seeing your company's colors. It starts to build trust because it's consistent. Consistency also builds trust. So be consistent. Now, the third option is if you want to play it safe, blues and greens are considered the most appealing colors all around the world, and scientists don't know why. They call it the blue phenomenon. So if you want to play it really safe, blues and greens are considered the most appealing colors. Do know that color has meaning in different countries. So if you choose colors independently of the first two, you would choose colors that mean something. So for example, if you are talking about mourning or a funeral in the States, it would be black. Where if you're talking about mourning or a funeral in some countries in South Africa, it would be red. So you would choose those colors accordingly. I hope that helps.
Yep. Yes.
Jay said, how long did it take me to come to this level? I am constantly growing, Jay. I've been doing design since I was in high school. I was lucky to go to a school for art in high school. So I'd say I'm 49 years old. So since high school, so I'm guessing 30 some years, somewhere like that. It's kind of like me trying to be as good as you are at what you do. It would take an awful long time. But the good news is people are out there sharing these best practices that then I can adopt. So I'm giving you a jump start, and you would give other people a jump start with what you're amazing at.
I think that's we have time for. I would just like to ask you one last closing question here, Mike. We see platforms and which are coming out with their ready templates, which can help you to turn out without naming them, or maybe you can name them, some platforms like Visme or Canva, where anybody can go out and create graphics. Don't you see that's something which is basically obstructing the creativity or the human engineering part, the human value add part, and we are getting dependent on pre-created templates, images, and just pushing them into the system?
Abhijit, it's, anything that we do is a double-edged sword. There's pros and cons to whatever we pick. And I think about it this way: if someone has no proficiency in visual thinking, design skills, this is a way to get them to start thinking that way, and to start understanding how to visually represent content and how to create it. Now, over time, I'm sure you would agree with this, Abhijit, you begin to graduate above that. You say, all right, I've used Canva, which is an amazing tool, by the way, canva.com. I've used Canva, and it can't give me what I want. So now I need to make it. So now you start to challenge yourself. Now you've already got all the skills you learned from Canva that you can pull upon and build upon. So think of it as a stepping stone for some people. If it's a crutch, that's a bad thing. And if people get stuck there, yes, that means that if my competitor is using Canva, I'm going to kick their butt. because my stuff is going to be better. It's just like if, Abhijit, your competitor used boilerplate or cookie cutter stuff, you're going to kick their butt because you've graduated beyond that.
Thank you. I got you from there. I think with that, I think we have we have taken a lot of your time, and thank you for so much of your time, Mike, and so much of your enthusiasm and interest and support to all these participants. We are really privileged to have you here and would like to have you, as you said, as a speaker. If not this year, we may check your calendar for the BPC. If not this year, definitely we are going to visit the Taj together. Okay, that's a
Yes.
promise I make to you. Okay,
That would be
thank you.
amazing.
Thank you. And thank you so much, participants. Thank you for your this encouraging support to APMP India's webinar. We would look forward for your feedback and do suggest the other ways of where we can improve, make those webinars more meaningful. And if you are not a member of APMP India still, please do become a member of APMP India so that we can grow this community larger and bigger. Thank you, everyone. Have a nice evening. Take care. Bye.
Thank you, Abhijit. Thank you, Rupesh. I really appreciate it. Thanks, everybody.
Thanks,
Thank you.
Mike.